I'm Linda McMahon, and it is certainly my privilege to serve as the chair of AFPI, and I want to welcome all of you here this morning who are here with us in attendance, but also those who are watching via live stream. I do believe all around the world. So we welcome our viewing audience live and on live stream. We're very proud to be here this morning because it's such an auspicious occasion. We are renewing our strength in the Middle East. This is the second anniversary of the Abraham Accords this week, and we're certainly proud to host this event here. It also gives me such special joy to welcome our close friends, Jared Kushner, for one, who will be speaking with us this morning. We also want to recognize and welcome our distinguished guests, especially our featured speakers today. Joining Jared Kushner will be Senator Joni Ernst of the great state of Iowa and co-chair of the Senate Abraham Accords Caucus. John Rakolta Jr., former U.S. Ambassador to the UAE, former National Security Advisor to the President, Robert O'Brien, Robert Greenway, the President and Executive Director of the Abraham Accords Peace Institute, and our very own Carla Sands, Vice Chair of AFPI's Center for Energy and the Environment, and former U.S. Ambassador to Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. And Bruce Pearl, head coach of Auburn men's basketball team and a champion of the Abraham Accords. We are also honored to welcome our distinguished guests in the audience. We have so many folks with us this morning. We're so happy to have you here. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, as well as the ambassadors of the UAE, Israel, Egypt, Finland, Hungary, and Romania, who are all here with us today. Welcome. This is such an important conversation about one of the most historic and transformative achievements of the Trump administration, not only for the American people, but for the Middle East and for the world. Over the last 2 years since the Abraham Accords were signed, the Middle East has seen historic diplomatic progress between Israel and the Abraham Accords signatory countries, such as the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco. This progress, which has included first ever visits by dignitaries of these nations, has also significantly improved ties with Israel's broader regional neighbors, particularly Egypt and Jordan. Saudi Arabia has just announced it would open its airspace to all carriers, allowing for more overflights to and from Israel. Very significant. Bilateral trade relations and security ties have been significantly bolstered, which of course advance our security interests in the region. Today's speakers all had front row seats into making these achievements possible, none perhaps more so than Jared Kushner, whose outstanding new book, Breaking History, is truly the authoritative account of not just the Abraham Accords, but the Trump presidency. And he's seen all of it from a bird's eye view. But he saw not only that, but he saw the unique approach of President Trump and his dedication to delivering for the American people. Jared, we are really so delighted and honored to have you with us today. We are also so happy to jointly host this event with your Abraham Accords Peace Institute and the fantastic team that you have assembled there. It is because of the importance of the Trump administration's achievements in the Middle East and the urgent need to build on them and educate about them that we here at the America First Policy Institute are excited today to launch our Middle East project. We are so excited to continue our fast and tremendous expansion in just over a year. And the launch of this line of effort demonstrates how important it is to us and to the American people. Thank you all once again for being here. And it's my distinct pleasure now to welcome to the stage our President and CEO, Brooke Rollins.
How about that chairman, Linda McMahon? Another round of applause for her. She has been such an incredible leader for us. Really remarkable. Thank you all for being here today. Again, my name is Brooke Rollins. I have the incredible honor and privilege of every day leading the America First Policy Institute, along with so many amazing men and women that believe in the vision of America First and believe that what was achieved in the last administration was not the end, but truly the beginning. And building out what that looks like for the next 100 years is what all of us are working so diligently around the clock, 7 days a week, to ensure that we have an America that is safe and secure and prosperous, where opportunity is for all. So again, I thank you so much for being here. It has been a remarkable 500 days for AFPI. We have about 150 staffers, 22 policy centers, boots on the ground in 32 states, not just stopping things we don't agree with necessarily in Washington or educating, but also working on the ground in key states around the country. So for all of you that have been a part of that build, we are so grateful to you and we thank you. I also want to thank our partner today, the Abraham Accords Peace Institute, led by the very capable Robert Greenway. What an awesome opportunity. I think we've done partnerships in the past to all of our friends at AAPI, but this is really the first outward-facing event that we have done in a really big way, and we've got tens of thousands of people watching on live stream. Thank you. An incredible interest from the media, standing in the back of the room and watching live stream. And then, of course, all of you who've joined us here today. It's really an honor to get to do this work and to work alongside you to put forward and celebrate the second anniversary of the Abraham Accords. So let me introduce our featured speaker for today, and what an honor to have him here. You know, a presidential administration, you can say many things about many of them, but there is no doubt that they are a generator of history. There are too many people, too many plans, and too much action to ever be able to be contained in a single sentence, a single video, or even a single book, or even really a single lifetime. But they'll be writing books about the Trump first term for generations to come. The story of how one administration accomplished more in 4 years than most have or will ever accomplish in 8. And when historians finish that work, they will have a record of a man who was indispensable to it all. Alongside President Donald J. Trump was Senior Advisor Jared Kushner, from the USMCA to the overhaul of the United States federal prison and criminal justice systems, to the signing of the Abraham Accords, which we will talk about today, and the unprecedented Operation Warp Speed, along with our work to secure the border along the South. There is truly no one, I believe, without the genius and the leadership that could have done more alongside our former president and vice president than Jared Kushner. But what many of you don't know, and you'll hopefully have read the book, if you haven't already bought it, go buy it and read it. It's an incredible telling of those 4 years, and really the year leading up to our first year in term 1. But what many of you don't know is the kind of man that Jared is. The amount of time and hours that we spent together with our teams in the West Wing was one of the greatest experiences of my life. But it wasn't just working for the American people day in and day out and day in and day out, but it was also watching a man who put his family first, who elevated his children and his wife and respect, with such respect and such magic. It was really an incredible thing to watch. And so what I'm so excited about, again, we're here to talk about the Abraham Accords, but for the story of Jared Kushner and his leadership and his genius to be told over many, many years to come. Please help me welcome to the stage my great friend, Jared Kushner.
I do have to say, after that introduction, I'm just not going to talk because I can never live up to anything near that. So, but thank you.
It's all so true, Jared. And welcome back to Washington. It's probably a little bit of mixed feelings to be here, but I'm guessing, like our team, it's an honor to continue the work and to talk about what you were able to achieve, frankly.
Thank you. It's actually great to be back here. There's so many amazing faces and friends that I've been able to see. And before we talk about Abraham Accords or book or whatever else you want to go through, I just have to acknowledge on this anniversary just two special people who are here. Number one, Ambassador Al-Taiba and Avi Berkowitz, who really were my partners in making this happen. I'll ask you both maybe just to stand up because I tried to capture a small percentage in the book of the incredible work you guys did, but like anything that's consequential, that everyone doubts will happen, that was improbable, it really took something that could have died almost 1,000 times. It almost did, but it took trust with great people who did an incredible job, who were very, very talented. So I just want to thank you both and acknowledge you on this day before we start. So.
Well, and it probably goes without saying, but you and I get to sit on the stage and take credit, but really the people that were part of the team day in and day out, who weren't on the stage, weren't in the media, didn't give press interviews, didn't write a book, they are the ones who really shepherded so much of this work. So, and you were always so great about giving people credit, which is really remarkable. So let's start. A couple of fun things we're going to talk about, but the first one, starting on a more personal note. Again, I'm so proud of you and everything that the team was able to accomplish, especially in this lane. But when you read the book, Breaking History, you talk about your professional path, your family, your faith, which is a very, very, probably your biggest characteristic that I learned being around you. And I love on page 64 of your book, you say, Trump invited us to stay the night in the Lincoln bedroom, a stately room located, page 64, a stately room located on the second floor of the White House where President Abraham Lincoln had hosted his cabinet meetings. Before we left for the balls, this was the night of the inauguration, we lit Shabbat candelabras and prayed. A member of the White House residence staff told us that it was the first time Shabbat candles had been lit in the private residence. I mean, just even thinking about that brings tears to my eyes, and I'm not even Jewish. So I think for you and your family and the extraordinary history, that had to have just been remarkable.
No, that was a pretty emotional moment. I didn't try to fact check her because I didn't want to know if it was true or not true, but I was going to believe it. And but it was a very special moment for my life, for my wife and I. I write in the book about my grandparents who survived the Holocaust, and they basically just narrowly escaped the Nazis. They were freedom fighters and working to come. They got married in Hungary. They were in Italy in a displaced person camp for about 4 years. Came to America as refugees, and then lived the American dream and built it up. And to think that, you could go from just 2 generations from that, where they were, their family members were killed. I write about their story a little bit, to then, working with the President of the United States and being in the White House, lighting, Shabbat candles when, just 2 generations before they tried to eliminate the Jewish people. It was a very, very special experience for us.
I can't even imagine, but watching you and Ivanka and your children live out your faith. I know that so many people across the country and the world were watching you, and we're so proud of really who you were and what you stood for. And I know that probably animated, I'm assuming, a lot of your work with the Abraham Accords and with the Middle East peace process. You talk a lot in your book about breaking history, breaking paradigms, starting from scratch. And I'd love, just for the audience, for you to walk through that. I mean, just almost from the beginning when everyone said that your approach was crazy and dumb and you didn't know what you were doing, to today where we're celebrating 2 years in of what was an extraordinary achievement.
So when I left government, a lot of people would ask, how did it occur? And to be honest, there were a lot of people I would see who would have like a very quick line to say it, but I couldn't really describe it because it was a series of a lot of different learnings and a lot of different people coming together that enabled us ultimately to make the breakthrough. Yusuf actually describes it, Ambassador Al-Taiba, in the best way, where he says you had the right people in the right places at the right time, working together, trusting each other. And that really extended from our leaders, right? President Trump, Mohammed bin Zayed, Bibi Netanyahu, all of them really put us in the right position to do it. And I think that for me, what I write about in the book is that how it was a journey. So the first year, because I had no experience in diplomacy, I think that was both an asset and a liability, right? And what I did is, for the first year, I really was trying to meet with all the people who'd worked on it before and try to get their perspective. And what I found was that people may have thought once I got going that I was doing it the wrong way, but I was pretty convinced that they were all doing it the wrong way. And I think that they had achieved a very similar result, which is by constantly going back to the same issues in the same ways, they constantly were failing. And so what we did is we listened to people. We saw, how do we look at the situation for what it is today? Let's focus on what are the common interests, what's possible, But fundamentally, I believe that people get put into positions where they're apart, but when people are together, they tend to agree and want to understand each other. And, between Israel and the Muslim countries, one of the biggest problems was that there was a lot of historical, I wouldn't use the word indoctrination per se, but there was a historical understanding or grievance that was passed down, but there wasn't the channel for people to have connection between each other to truly understand where they have commonality. And if I have to say that the Abraham Accords, I think, has done amazing things from a national security point of view for America, for the world. But what I get the most satisfaction out of is seeing people from Israel, from the Arab world, come together, meet each other, have dinner together, do business together, talk together. And I think that what it's doing is it's lowering that hostility, which has really existed now for over 70 years in the region, which is leading to the restoration of Jews and Muslims and Christians all being able to live in harmony in that region, which is something that I think is very, very positive for the world.
You write on that note that for decades, even this is the beginning of chapter 13, Great Expectations. For decades, even the most seasoned foreign policy experts had failed to broker peace in the Middle East. These experts were skeptical that I could succeed where they had repeatedly failed. What chance did a 36-year-old real estate investor have? I understood that the probability of success was slim, but I was determined to search for a breakthrough. I told myself that the worst that could happen was that I would just fail like everyone else. So walk us through what that was like. I mean, the ups and the downs, and then ultimately just the courage and the heart to see it through.
I'd like to make it a bigger thing, than it actually was, but it was very simple. The President of the United States asked me to do a job, and in doing it, you just have to figure out how to do it the best you can, and you have different ways to do it. And I would see people in government approach problems differently. One is they would say, this is likely to fail. Let me start figuring out how to blame it on somebody else and explain why it wasn't that I failed. It was just that the problem was too hard or this person's bad. Or you can say, let me give this the best shot at trying to succeed. And I think that what we did here is we basically said, okay, there's probably like 1,000 ways to fail, and there's probably maybe like 1 or 2 ways to make a breakthrough, even though, sometimes we doubted even that there was, 1 or 2 ways. I mean, the president would always joke that solving Middle East peace was like a cliche, as like the thing that just could never happen. And so what we did is we basically said, if we're going to do it, let's give it everything we had. And it really took us just, eliminating the noise. Again, a lot of people were saying we weren't qualified, which they weren't unjustified in saying. And then as we did things differently, nobody had probed or tried those things before. So we were in a lot of uncharted territory. And in a region where there'd been a lot of wars, a lot of death, a lot of conflict, what people thought was that if you did this thing, it would lead to the world exploding. And I write about in the book about how President Trump decided to move the embassy to Jerusalem. And I take people in the Situation Room and into those discussions and into people's fears. And it was a very intense decision that was made. But when that happened, we worked with all of our friends in the region to say, look, we understand you may not agree with us, but we want to see that we can work together in different ways. And what happened was President Trump made the decision. The next morning, the sun rose. The next evening, the sun set, and life moved on. Same thing happened again with pulling out of the Iran deal. And people said, if you do this, it's going to lead to World War III. It's going to be a disaster. And by the way, these weren't like just binary yes or no decisions President Trump made. There was thoughtful policy process. There was disagreement. One thing that I actually think, again, they write about Lincoln's team of rivals and how he had different people around, and they celebrate that. One thing with Trump, people would say, oh, it's chaotic because people disagree with each other in the White House. I thought that was a strength of the president, that he constantly wanted people around him who had strong points of view. And so this way, sometimes he let them fight it out. Sometimes it was private. Sometimes it would leak to the press a little bit. But what it did was it gave him the right ability to press all the positions and make the decision. So he did the same thing with Iran, and I think that also showed. When it came time to move forward with a lot of the work, we just said that as long as we were doing things that were rational, were logical, and were pointing out what we thought were the right foundational elements for peace, then we said it was worth doing it. And we were very lucky that a lot of our friends in the region worked with us to try to do that. And so fundamentally, I believe that the job of a government is to provide security for their population so that they can have economic opportunity and the ability to fulfill their potential and to make the best lives for themselves. And so we created a set of situations where we were putting the different leaders in a prism. When we came into the job, everyone said the Middle East, it's really about Sunni, Shia divides. When I got in, I saw a very clear divide that was much different than how the conventional people thought, which is I said there's two different leaders in the Middle East. People who want to give their people better lives and give their people opportunity, and then people who are trying to justify their existence based on some religious perversion or some, scapegoating of somebody else. And so that was really the fundamental divide. And what we saw was that if peace were to occur, it has to be about the future, not about, a grievance from the past. And it has to be about getting people to focus on their interests and how they can make their lives better and their family lives better by doing things that people hadn't done before. And so by doing that, we were fortunate to have great partners. And again, I write about this a lot in the book because it wasn't a very simple process, but I joke that we accomplished it on plan C, but only because we went through the alphabet 3 times, failing at every letter, and then we kept learning from each thing that went wrong, and then iterated, and were just determined, as long as the president said this was a job, we had to keep going. We weren't going to turn the engine off.
Well, I think that's really well said. And while I didn't have the opportunity or honor to work on this project with you, we did work on a lot of other projects together. And in many ways, it was a very similar model that you just couldn't give up. And I do think in a way that made our administration a little bit different. We all came from outside, for the most part, outside the box. And so figuring out how to solve these issues. But I know that the time, people would always say, what's the hardest thing in the White House? And I would always say it's not having enough time. And I remember something you had said very similar to that while we were working together. And then in your book, you actually get into that. You say, few would even know all the heated conversations, agonizing decisions, and sweet moments of victory that occurred within these walls, the West Wing. I picked up the last 2 items I had left until the very end. The mezuzah on the doorway. Did I say that correctly? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm a small town girl from Texas, y'all. You'll have to forgive the mispronunciations. And then also an hourglass that our friend Chris Liddell had given to you. You say, as I prepared to leave the White House for the final time, I thought about what Liddell has said, that every day here is sand through an hourglass, and we have to make it count. I knew I had lived by those words. I never forgot that my office wasn't really my office. I was just the current inhabitant. From the day we arrived, I never stopped working, and I can attest to that. My responsibility was to give every ounce of energy I had to help the president advance his vision for the American people. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like and what really a day for you moving through multiples of different policy lanes and issues, but obviously the Abraham Accords, I would guess, being the very top of that list, but what that was like for you and your family and how you prioritized all those issues.
Yeah. So what I would say, number one, is that when you're in the White House, you have tremendous ability to impact things. And I remember actually in 2009, I was invited to the White House with a bunch of young entrepreneurs during the great recession as it was going on, and we were all very excited to be there, and we thought we were going to give input. And I think we met with somebody in like the EOB who maybe had never met the president before, and it was it was like a big group of us, and we were. But I remember it was a big day going to the White House, right? I told my mom, I told my grandma, and so I realized that everyone coming to the White House has an opportunity for you to impact the policy they're working on, maybe in a way that no other meeting they're going to have in their week or their year or their lifetime could. And so I made sure that we always gave people the experience of what they wanted, in the sense that, and maybe it's thinking like a business person, which is every meeting you do, and you're doing meetings every 30 minutes, is let's figure out doable, not doable, give quick no's if it's not going to happen, but if it's yes, follow up, be efficient, and do your best to get as much done as possible. And I think that we were transactional in how we thought about our policies, right? In the sense that what were we getting for America, what were we doing for other countries, and how do we advance those interests? But we were very much focused on let's do everything we can do that's positive in every minute we have. And I realized that, I also write about in the book a lot of the investigations and the attacks and what it was like to be in that environment. But I realized that in Washington, it's kind of like a time duration game, right? In the sense that you have to accomplish everything you can while you have the opportunity. And the other side is doing everything they can to either frustrate you, distract you, stall you, and the media's around trying to get you to be distracted and chase rabbits all the time. And you have to figure out, how do you keep your eye on the prize and get there? And so from a family point of view, it's hard. You say, oh, I want to take my son to his Little League game. And then the phone's ringing. You're saying, well, I'm supposed to be with my kids. But you're saying, well, it's not like it's a world matter of importance. So, well, actually, it's a leader of a country, who maybe has a problem. You got to pick it up. And so, for 4 years, you never had the ability to turn it off. But But we never saw it as a burden. We saw it as an opportunity because there was so much that we could have gotten done. And even with the Middle East, we always said, okay, well, do we take this next trip? If we do, a lot of people, kind of wished we would have stopped pushing, right? Because they kind of thought we were foolish a little bit by saying nothing's ever going to happen. It's, it's kind of cute that you guys keep pushing to, get everyone to focus on this. And I think a lot of people wanted us to stop because they thought maybe we were wasting our time. And maybe we were, I don't know. But I think that that's really the opportunity. And I think if there's one lesson that we can all take today on the anniversary of the Abraham Accords from this is that we don't have to accept things as they are if we think that things can be better. And I think that that's what it was, because all it took here was a small group of people who were empowered by their leadership to believe that something larger and better could be, and they worked their butts off in order to achieve it against great odds, against great resistance. But they found a way, and it would have been very easy for us to, have more dinner parties or spend more time with our families and not get things done. But we knew that we had an amazing opportunity, and we did everything we could to make sure that we did that. And today we see the fruits of that, which is, again, in America, I think that there's still, a lot of Trump derangement syndrome, which I think they're starting to do clinical trials on some remedies for. But I think that because of that, they've refused. I mean, the incoming administration or the current administration, it took them a year to really call it by its name, and I think now they've embraced it because they see how good it is, and that's because it was enduring in the region and something that's really been so celebrated, embraced, and I think that people don't want to be a part. I think maybe there's something we could learn about that for the division we have in our country today too, which is that now that there's a mechanism for, Arabs and Jews to get together and have discussions, people are running through that window, not wanting to stay in their camps. And so I do think it's a very exciting time in the Middle East in that regard. I think that, if you won't go back to 2016, ISIS had a caliphate the size of Ohio. The Iran deal was just done, which gave $150 billion. They were using that money to fund the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. Syria was in a civil war where 500,000 people were basically killed. Yemen was unstable. Libya was unstable. And all of America's allies had felt very betrayed. You fast forward now, 5, 6 years forward, now it's one of the most exciting regions in the world. Economically, it's doing phenomenally well. It's more integrated than ever. The young generation that we were worried about being radicalized by the extremists is now being inspired by their leadership to build startup companies and to figure out how to make the region and the world much better. So I do think that, again, paradigms can shift, but it takes people, with courage, willing to, and determination, willing to stick with it in order to make that happen.
That's really well said. And something you said at the beginning reminded me when you said it, the way we worked to ensure that people coming into the White House felt included in the process and that we understood that they were a big value add for the most part. It reminded me of the very first time I met you, and I was invited in to be part of a discussion on criminal justice reform, and you sat to the left. There were probably 20 of us in the room in the Eisenhower building, and I'll never forget because you walked in. You weren't always on time, but that day you were on time. You sat down, you had a yellow notepad, and for 1 hour, you just listened and took notes. And without really even saying much, you just listened to every person in the room and what they had to say and what they could bring to the table, including I was one of those. And I was really blown away, and really, I think that's when I became such a big Jared Kushner fan, because I realized that you weren't really in it for certainly the fancy office and the getting your name in the media, et cetera, that in fact you really were there to try to make a difference. And seeing the seriousness and the purpose with which you approached every single one of the lanes that you worked in was really remarkable and really inspiring. So having been on the other end of your approach, I can really appreciate it and say that it really worked.
Thank you. Well, what I'll say to that is at the end of that meeting, we said, let's all meet up again. We came up with what we thought next steps were, and we said, let's meet up again in 30 days in order to start putting the plan that we kind of had sketched out in that meeting together. And Brooke said, why 30 days? We could be here next week. And I said, you are literally the first person I've met who I've been in Washington with who's come back with a more aggressive deadline than I was setting. So I knew I liked her.
That's a true story.
And then that's
a
when
true
I
story.
started the recruitment process to say we need her help on the inside. And obviously what you've done with AFPI and what you did in the White House and what you're continuing to do is with the same urgency and the same intelligence and the same impact. So very, very grateful for that. And I do want to say, if you have more questions, we can do that. But I also do want to just make one moment just to mention Rob and the team at AFPI and the team at the Abraham Accords Institute for Peace, who really have done just tremendous work, doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that all of these new relationships between the governments when the Trump administration left was continued to form. You know, one of the things that was so remarkable to me when the Abraham Accords occurred was that you couldn't make phone calls from the countries. You couldn't wire money between the countries. And President Trump does, a phone call with Mohammed bin Zayed and with Bibi Netanyahu. And we put out a statement that we say, okay, well, now what happens now, right? And it was pretty unprecedented. And we didn't realize, how the Israelis and the Emiratis had to kind of learn to work with each other. And there was just a lot of things that needed to happen. And so we got a lot of those things done thanks to a lot of great partners. And then the same thing happened with Morocco, with Sudan, with Bahrain. But then, obviously Rob and his team have done an incredible job, working to connect those wires and really to bring this forward and to find avenues for the positivity to be accelerated even more. So I'm very grateful for the work you've done. And I just have to acknowledge Ambassador O'Brien, who really was such a strong supporter and enabler of so much of the work we were doing. Again, none of it would have happened without him, and just very, very grateful. And also just Ambassador Ricolta and Ambassador Fisher, who are here as well, who are really just the eyes and ears on the ground and fixing so many problems that you'll never hear of because they were fixed, because we had very competent, committed people doing it. So I just want to throw this out. There's probably 1,000 more people I should thank as well, but I know we don't have endless time. So.
Well, I know that they appreciate that, and for those that were not thanked, I know that the appreciation continues. So let's wrap up with this, and then we'll move to our panel. So today marks the second anniversary of the Accords, and you've touched on this a little bit, but just sort of to wrap it up nicely, how have the Accords fared in the last 2 years? And clearly, looking back, it was a remarkable, monumental achievement, but I would suggest or think that your thought is really it is just the beginning. And what do you see moving forward as the real promise and opportunity here?
So one of the things, when you're in Washington, you're trying to get everything done. And again, my job was so multi-topic that now that I'm out and I wrote the book and you get a chance to reflect, you say what was real and what was fleeting, right? So there was a lot of things we did that got overturned right away. But there's a lot of things we did that were either embraced or that have been enduring regardless. And so when I think about our prison reform and criminal justice reform, that's been fully embraced. It was bipartisan. It's enduring. When I think about the trade deals, I have to acknowledge Ambassador Lighthizer here, who really was one of my best friends and great mentors in the administration, who taught me a lot about trade, about life, about so many things. But those trade deals have been fully embraced by both sides. Still a couple people who maybe are a little angry you did too good of a job, but that's another story. But when I think about the Abraham Accords, what's been so satisfying to me is that they've very enduring and embraced fairly globally in a very big way. And so the recognition that they've gotten is worthwhile. I think that we're still at the very early phases of figuring out what the potential can be between the Israeli people and the different countries that have embraced it. The biggest revelation, I write about this in the book about a dinner I had with the Sultan of Oman, and it was an incredible dinner. It's a lot of very funny stories in there, which you could all read. But he said one thing to me that really stuck with me, where he said, I feel badly for the Palestinian people that they carry the burden with them of the Muslim world. And I kind of said, wait, who the hell elected these incompetent negotiaters to negotiate for the Muslim world on the Al-Aqsa Mosque? And what I saw from different focus groups that we did in Amman and Cairo and Ramallah was basically that the Muslim population viewed the conflict with Israel through the eyes of not being allowed to have access to the mosque. So I think that if you look at a lot of the propaganda for ISIS or a lot of the jihadist groups who are recruiting, they say, we have to go and destroy Israel, or you have to come and be a jihadist because we're fighting to save the mosque. But the mosque is open, right? Israel's agreed to that for a long time. Even in the peace proposal we put forward, they agreed that the King of Jordan should be able to retain the custodianship of the mosque. And now we're finally starting to have Muslims from throughout the world travel through Dubai to go and visit the mosque, and that is very, very exciting because they put it on Instagram, they put it on Facebook, and people are saying, wait, we thought that we weren't allowed to pray there. We thought this was under attack. Well, it's free, it's open. And I think that that's a very important thing towards lowering the propaganda that's been put out over the last 70 plus years. But with regards to where it goes, is I think the biggest disappointment so far is that more countries haven't been brought into it. And I think that we had about 6 active discussions that we had going on. I think that there's a lot more to build on. But again, I do hope that the current administration will focus on that and work to do that, because once the whole Arab-Israeli conflict is over, I think that you will have an era of prosperity and peacefulness in that region that will endure for a very, very long time.
Please help me thank a true visionary, Jared Kushner. All right, now I'd like to invite our panelists up. Here at AFPI, we like to do things very efficiently. So while I am introducing them, we're also going to be moving chairs up to the stage. So forgive the little bit of background, but to keep things moving along. First, I'd love to introduce the Honorable Robert O'Brien, who got a shout out, serving as the 27th National Security Advisor from 2019 to 2021, where his tenure included amazing things, including greater cooperation around the world, but of course the signing of the Abraham Accords. Previously, I'm sure you all know, he served as the Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs and was directly involved in the return of 25 detainees and hostages back home to the United States. Please help me welcome National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. Would you sit right there? Yeah, perfect. Honorable John Ricolta, currently chairman of the Walbridge Group, but previously served as the United States Ambassador to the UAE and also the Commissioner General of Expo Dubai 2020, which featured over 30,000 events over the course of 180 days, including 24 million visits. One of our brightest stars in the Trump administration. Please help me welcome the Honorable John Ricolta. Speaking of stars, but this time on the basketball court, Coach Bruce Pearl. We have with us all the way from Auburn University, the head coach of the Auburn Tigers men's basketball team. I love it. How great is this? We have all these sort of ambassadors and national security advisors, and then Coach Pearl, is so good to have you. Really, really great to have you. But his background in this is deep. He realized a lifelong dream in the summer of 2008 when his country called upon him to serve as the head coach of the Maccabi USA's Open men's basketball team at the 18th World Games in Israel. He led the American squad to the gold medal for the third time in just 24 years, toppling the favored Israel in the titled game. He just returned literally in the last couple of days, Coach, from leading the inaugural Birthright for College basketball tour in Israel, and has recently begun speaking about an Abraham Accords Cup to take place between Israel and signatory nations of the Abraham Accords. Coach Bruce Pearl, everyone. And my great friend and the newest addition to the America First Policy Institute, the Honorable Carla Sands, who leads our AFPI Center for Energy and the Environment with Governor Rick Perry. Of course, she just finished a very spicy U.S. Senate run in Pennsylvania, where she was such a great and eloquent speaker on behalf of America First ideas, and how great we are and grateful we are to have her. Obviously, in the last administration, she served as the United States Ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands, and is just a remarkable leader for everything that we all believe in. So please help me welcome Ambassador Carla Sands. And finally, our moderator, the Honorable Rob Greenway, currently President and CEO of the Abraham Accords Peace Institute. He previously served as Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director of the National Security Council's Middle East and North African Affairs. In that role, he implemented sanctions against Iran, was instrumental in the removal of Soleimani and Baghdadi and the defeat of ISIS, and was part of the team that negotiated the historic Abraham Accords. Please help me welcome our esteemed panel.
Thanks, everyone, very much. I appreciate our hosts at America First, the teams at both America First and the Abraham Accords Peace Institute for the work to make today a reality, and also to our distinguished guests and all of those in attendance here physically and virtually. We'll dive in because time is precious and we've got a lot of ground to cover, and we're fortunate in being blessed with distinguished guests in order to do it. Even if you don't get our monthly newsletter, and I hope that you do, I think it's been plain to all that the progress made by the Abraham Accords members in the past 2 years has been extraordinary. That was, of course, the expectation, but there is a tremendous amount of work that lies in front of us, as was discussed earlier. I think what we'd appreciate from our panel members today is their insight into what we can expect based on their diverse fields and expertise and their long-term exposure to the region. And so there's been progress, but I guess, again, the potential here is what we'd like to spend our time on. Our first question goes to Ambassador Sands, and will relate to the field of energy. Israeli companies Enlight and NewMed announced a plan last month just to jointly develop, fund, build, and manage renewable energy projects across the Middle East and North Africa, including Morocco, the Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Oman. Last year, Mubadala Petroleum signed a deal with Israel's Delek Petroleum, forging a partnership in the Eastern Mediterranean. How can the Accords members build on the collaboration begun to develop critical solutions to European markets struggling to overcome the loss of Russian gas following their invasion of Ukraine? Ambassador.
Well, thank you for the question. It's an important one. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014. So they've had a hot war there for a long time. This should come as no surprise to any of us. But now we have the tremendous escalation and the crisis for energy for the EU that's unprecedented. In most of our lifetimes, we haven't seen such a terrible situation. And certainly American natural gas can be part of the answer to this crisis for the EU. But I think we should also look at the Eastern Mediterranean. You know, they've discovered just not that long ago the Zohr, the Leviathan, the Tamar, and the Aphrodite fields. And this natural gas exploration between just Cyprus and Israel is capable of replacing about 20% of what Russia was supplying to the EU. They're capable of supplying up to 25 billion cubic meters per year to the EU. So that's exciting. But there are more potentials even undiscovered in the region. And we're having some obstacles in integrating the Abraham Accord members into the global energy markets. Part of the problem is the United States and Europe are reluctant to view natural gas as a long-term, sustainable solution to meet the demands that Europe has. But we know natural gas is cheap, it's plentiful, and it's abundant, and it's clean. It's for years, the harvesting and transport of natural gas and energy has been unfairly scrutinized, as financial institutions have worked to diversify away from fossil fuels, and the result has been delays and abandonment, killing deals for critical infrastructure. If you look at projects like the East Med natural gas pipeline, it was directly linking Eastern Mediterranean and their abundant resources with Europe. And despite Western opposition, the Abraham Accords have created the space to attract majors like Chevron, Noble, and many other companies to invest in the region. In fact, you mentioned the Mubadala investment from Abu Dhabi. One of their sovereign wealth funds has invested $1 billion in the Israeli Tamar field. And we also see that we need resources coming in to increase the regional cooperation so that they can maximize their opportunity, their financial opportunity in the region. And now we have the establishment of the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum. It's a multilateral public-private organization that's focusing on regional growth. And it's complementary to the Abraham Accords. And European nations and the EU are keenly interested in this organization. But to realize the potential more fully, we need more cross-border investment, and we need to attract foreign direct investment for regional infrastructure growth and also for marketing the opportunity. Delivering the resources of the region requires a partnership with nations outside of the borders of the Eastern Mediterranean. And we have the U.S. Beyond supplying our world-class know-how and our innovation, can correct our trajectory of public-private divestment by signaling support of regional natural gas projects. So in Europe, for Europe, it has to view the Abraham Accord members and the resources that they offer as mutually beneficial long-term relationships, not just a temporary off-ramp from Russian energy. So Europe's solution, we believe, lies in the diversification of sources, of supplies, and of routes. And the U.S. will continue to grow our role as a supplier, but so should members of the Abraham Accords.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We look forward to
Thanks.
the work that you and your center will do. And we certainly agree that integrating our partners and allies in the region with those in Europe is certainly to the betterment of us all and would be perhaps a better strategic dependency. Ambassador Bryan, I know you just returned from the region, and it is ironic in a sense that we're witnessing a land war in Europe for the first time in a half century, and we're here to celebrate genuine peace in the Middle East between Israel and its Arab neighbors for the first time in a generation. How do you see the Accords enabling its members to achieve long-term goals, all of which are, in many cases, divergent? And how can the United States and our partners and allies sustain and expand the progress made?
Well, thanks, Rob. Yeah, thank you, Rob. And the coach will understand this. You're only as good as your team. And at the NSC, we had a great team. And Rob really led a tremendous group of men and women. Miguel Correa, Mark Vanderoff was one of the other senior directors, and a whole host of folks I can't even mention that helped me get my job done. So thank you, Rob, for your tremendous work on the Accords and all that you've done. And it's great to be on the stage when we talk about how we accomplished so many things diplomatically during the Trump administration. It's because we had some fantastic ambassadors, and you know we've got Bob here, Rob Lighthizer, and John and Carla, and I think David Fisher is over there I see, and Jim Jeffries. We've got a bunch of great ambassadors here, and so thank you for all that you did. Let me start for just a moment, and Jared touched on this, you know, as he began, I think his first or second answer. And let's just focus on peace for peace sakes for a moment. I mean, we talk about the geopolitical implications of the Abraham Accords, and they're important, and I'll discuss those. We talk about the economic issues that Carla laid out. But let's just talk about peace for a moment. So my faith in the 5th chapter of the book of Matthew, Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the peacemakers because they'll be the sons of God, or be called the sons of God. And we've got a lot of peacemakers in the room today, and I'll mention some of them in just a moment. But it's really an important thing to sometimes step back and just think about for humanity what the Abraham Accords mean, and not just what it means to us economically or geopolitically or how we're going to contain Iran or compete with China. And so I said something to the president. I had just returned from a mission to Turkey. I was fairly new in my role as National Security Advisor. And as some of you may recall, the Turks were going to invade Syria. Our Kurdish allies were kind of in the way of their plans. And so I went to Syria with a number of people, the Vice President, the Secretary of State. Jim was there. And we spent a long couple of days negotiating with the Turks, trying to save the lives of our Kurdish allies. And in one night, we saved about 8,000 lives. We were able to exfiltrate Syrian Kurdish allies of ours through Turkish lines that night. And Jim Jeffries spent a lot of time with General Mazloum on the sat phone while we were negotiating with President Erdogan. And we got that done, and I was quite proud of it. The media didn't give us a lot of the credit that we deserved for that, and it was the president deserved for sending us over there and getting that done. And I came back and I saw President Trump, and I said, Mr. President, I knew some of the things that we had on our agenda. We wanted to get peace in Afghanistan, working with Secretary Pompeo and Ambassador Khalilzad. We wanted to get Serbia-Kosovo done with Ambassador Grinnell. We wanted to heal the Gulf Rift, which was a problem with our Arab allies. Obviously, the Abraham Accords were on the agenda. So I told the president, I said, Mr. President, I think when this is over
And I guess we didn't know if there'd be a second term at the time, but I said, when your time as president's over, I think you're going to be known as a peacemaker. And the president kind of looked at me and gave me a funny look, and I don't think he wasn't quite sure what to make of that. And when I saw him the last day in office, I was one of the people to say goodbye to him at the White House the morning of the 20th. I said, do you remember when I said you'd be a peacemaker, and that's what your legacy would be? He looked at me and said, well, you may have been right. And I think we were, and I think celebrating the Abraham Accords today really is one of the great legacies of a very accomplished administration, but something that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 150 years from now, people are going to write about and talk about. And so one other quick thing, I was on the flight, the first flight, Rob was on the flight, Jared and I were up in seat 1 and 2. I put out a picture of us, and it got about 12 retweets. Jared put out a tweet, and it got 20,000 retweets, and including an email from my mom who said, I see you're on the plane with Jared. And I said, well, did you see that from my Twitter? She said, no, I saw it on Jared's Twitter account. And so it was a good picture, so that was good. But it was an older I think we were on a 737. It was an older plane, and it had the little map up in front, and it showed us crossing into Saudi airspace. And the pilot came on first in Hebrew and then in English, said, we've now crossed into Saudi airspace. And I looked over, and our Israeli colleagues, a couple of them were crying, and some of them were very teared up. And these were security guys. We were doing a national security trilateral event. That was the reason for the trip. And Mayor Ben Shabbat, who was the National Security Advisor of Israel at the time, he's a tough guy, but he looks like your friend's rabbi. He's an older guy who has his kippah on, and he was all teared up. And I got kind of a bad sense of humor sometimes. I said, look, Mayor, let's face it, this isn't the first time an Israeli jet has flown over Saudi Arabia. And he looked at me and he said, yes, but it's the first time we've been invited. And I think that said it all. And it was a privilege to be there with Jared. And this wouldn't have happened without Jared. And that was a great. There were many things that happened with that flight. It's something we'll remember. And it was great landing in Abu Dhabi and getting down off the stairs. And John and Terry Ricolta, who are longtime friends of ours, met us at the bottom of the staircase and welcomed us to Abu Dhabi. And it was a great trip. And so I want to thank them. I want to thank Ambassador Oteba for his work on the peace process. It wouldn't have happened with Yosef without you. In fact, I probably wouldn't have been National Security Advisor if it wasn't for Yosef, because he helped me get hostages back. And so he's done a lot for this country, and we're grateful for that. But it was also the leaders, not just President Trump, and I said this at the time, I thought it took not just political courage, but it took physical courage, which is something that we don't celebrate these days, to be a peacemaker in the Middle East. So for Bibi Netanyahu, for the Crown Prince, now the President of the UAE, MBZ, for King Hamad, for King Mohammed in Morocco. Look, peacemakers haven't done well. I mean, we look at what happened to Yitzhak Rabin. We look at what happened to Anwar Sadat. It's very dangerous to make peace in the Middle East. And I thought these leaders that came together and made peace did it at personal risk, not just how the street would respond, but to their own lives. And so that was impressive. Obviously, this wouldn't have happened without Jared's leadership in the White House. And I'll tell one story. I probably shouldn't do this. I don't know if the president will be happy about this or not, but we're only on national TV, so it's okay. But Jared had asked me to go talk to the president about an issue, and it was something I agreed with, and it was something that Rob and his team were working on. So it wasn't out of the ordinary. But I won't mention the issue, but it had to do with the peace process. And I went in and told the president in the dining room, and he looked at me and he said, "Jared put you up to this, didn't he?" And I said, "No, sir. This is our NSC. This is our best analysis of the NSC." And of course, before I could respond, Jared walks into the dining room and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing in here?" The president just looked at me and said, "Get out of here." And so we left, and I looked at Jared. I said, "I think that's a yes." And he said, "I think it is too." And so we kind of moved the ball forward a little bit. But he did tremendous work. Secretary Pompeo did a great job, and Secretary Mnuchin, Director Haspel, Avi, who's out here, Avi Berkowitz, was tireless and was running around all over the region. Brian Hook at the State Department. I mentioned our NSC team, and then we had some great ambassadors on the ground: Ambassador Fisher, Ricolta, Ambassador Friedman. So we just had a really amazing team of folks that made this happen. And I think all of you who were involved in this process, more important than any medal that you received or any accolades for it, is to know in your heart that you were a peacemaker and helped bring people together. And I just got back from the region. And when folks talk about how enduring the Accords were, Rob talked about that, Jared talked about it, people in the region have changed because of the Abraham Accords. So now let me get to the geopolitics of it, and I'll try and wrap up quickly because I know we're limited on time. Number one, there were two things that kept me awake at night as National Security Advisor, and folks used to ask, what are the great threats to the United States? And I'd say, there's one immediate threat, and that's the Islamic Republic of Iran. And there's one existential long-term threat, and that's the People's Republic of China and the Communist Party of China. And it's interesting how the Accords play a role in both those, because by bringing our Gulf Arab allies and Israel together, we have an alliance that can be a counterweight to Iran, that can stand up to Iran, that can help us, and hopefully we won't enter into another JCPOA deal. It was bad. The first one was bad. This one's worse. But the Accords provide a framework. It's not a new NATO, but it provides a framework for cooperation in the region that helps us stand up to Iran's economic activity, their terrorist activity, their nuclear activity, their military adventurism. And so that's a great thing for the region, but that benefits America tremendously. And then I'll point something out with China that's very important. If you haven't been to Tel Aviv lately, it's the second Silicon Valley. I mean, every time you get in front of your computer, you're dealing with software or hardware that was in part manufactured or developed or researched in Israel. Israel has become a tech bonanza, and it's good for investors, it's good for the economy of Israel. But in our competition with China, it's a tech competition. And America can't do it alone, and Israel is our great ally on that front. Now, as we made it harder for Chinese companies to invest in America, as we made it harder for Chinese companies to steal our IP, which they've been doing rampantly, as we made it harder for them to come buy American tech companies, we haven't figured out how to keep them from buying the farmland next to our military bases, but we'll get to that. But at least we stopped them in tech. As we stopped them in tech, they started going to Israel. And Israelis are entrepreneurs, and they'd leave the IDF, and they'd want to start their own cyber firm or their own tech firm. And the Chinese were investing. Now what's happened with the Abraham Accords is the investors are coming from the Gulf. They're coming from places like Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and there are two exciting capitals in the world these days. When you travel, you see Tel Aviv, which is exciting. There's cranes everywhere, and then you go to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and you see the excitement that's happening there. And it's the sort of thing we saw in Singapore and both cities 20 years ago. But they're the hot new cities. And what we've done is we've brought these cities together. So we have these finance guys and these entrepreneurs and tech guys and gals in Abu Dhabi and Dubai teaming up with our colleagues in Israel. And what it's done is in many ways, it's pushed the Chinese out, because the Chinese are always predatory on their investment and their loans, and the Israelis can get a fair deal with the folks in the Emirates or Bahrain or Morocco. And so we're seeing a geopolitical benefit that I don't think folks focused on when we entered into the Abraham Accords, but now we're seeing in our tech battle and our competition with China, we're seeing this tremendous advantage that's accrued to the United States because of the peace that was made. So I'll end with that. Thank you, Robin. Great to be on the panel with Carl and the coach and John. It's an honor for me to be here with so many good friends. It's kind of like a reunion for some of us to see each other and to celebrate Aria. Thank you. And so many people contributed to this great peace deal and the accords that took place. And I think all of us who were there on the lawn of the White House on that sunny day and watched the leaders sign the accords, we'll never forget that. And hopefully our kids and our grandkids and their kids won't forget it either. So thank you all. God bless you. And Rob, thank you for your great question. I hope I answered it at least in part.
Always, sir. Always, sir. Thank you very much. And certainly that strategic vision guided and continues to inform the development of the Accords, but the foundation is peace. We've talked about the energy component of this. We talked about the geostrategic expertly. I think there are other domains. Ambassador Ricolta, as we look at the other aspects of the economies that are now integrated across the Accord countries, there's significant market activity, as Ambassador O'Brien mentioned, across the region. There's rapid growth in the construction sector, which few know better than you. And escalating costs, though, continue to constrain it to a certain extent. Price increases, imported materials, project delivery constraints widespread throughout the region and globally. Raw material prices, steel included in that, have increased as well. Shipping costs have increased dramatically. Many argue it's unsustainable. From your perspective, where do you think the challenges and opportunities in global markets broadly and how the Accords member countries can chart a path under the current environment?
Well, thank you, and I guess this is on. Okay, thank you very much. My other panel members, great to be here with you. Before I get started on answering that multi-part question, I just want to thank Jared and just give a little insight into what it's like working for him. I had not known Jared all that well. We met once during the campaign. I had a mutual friend, shared some stories, but really never talked much about where we were going with this. And then I find myself, just before going to post, being invited to the White House by the National Security Advisor O'Brien here, and marched me into the president's office and to have a short conversation. And I was really impressed. I had met President Trump a couple times in the past and found him nothing like the press had described him. He was energetic. He was a great listener, asked very, very insightful questions. We talked a lot about the auto industry in which I build plants across the world. So he wanted to see me just before I left, and I went and sat down next to him, and he looked at me, talked a little bit, and then he asked me two very important questions. One, what are your priorities? I begged off, said I'd like to get there for 60 days and see what the Emiratis had to say before I start talking about priorities. Second question, what can I do to help you? I was stunned by that. I was really not all that prepared, hadn't thought that that question would be asked. But I knew that the Emiratis were looking to get into a very, very important weapons program. That sort of spoke to the fact that if you got into this weapons program, you would be a top strategic ally of the United States. Not only was the weapons program important, but being admitted to it was just as important. There's a level of trust that is beyond anything else two countries can do. And I struggled for what I might say, and I asked, would we admit them into a confidential briefing for this weapons program? And the president, and by the way, the administration, there was all these points of view about whether yes or no, with the president for it or against it. The former national security advisor had made some comments about it. There was a lot of consternation in the administration. And so I asked, can we give them this confidential briefing? And the president, without batting an eye, waved his hands and said, yes, we can. And that gave me all kind of strength to go out there knowing full well that the president had my back. As I'm walking out of the Oval Office, I get a little note on a little piece of paper and said, stop by and see Jared Kushner before you leave. So I go into his office. By the way, he has an office where he has a standing desk, no place to sit. And the office is all of 6 by 6 feet. I mean, it can only fit two people in there, you and he. And so he's busy working away. I go in there and I look at him, and he said, hey, John, how you doing? I said, fine, I'm on my way to Abu Dhabi. He said, I got 4 words for you, or 3 words. Fix Expo Dubai. And I looked at him and I said, Jared, you need $60 million to fix it, and our Congress has already told us we're not getting it. He said, you'll figure out a way. And that, along with the president, really showed me the kind of support that this administration apparently gave to all the people that work for it. And I don't think they get enough credit about how good of bosses they were in approach toward the country that I went to, and obviously the rest of the administration. So Jared, thank you very much for the confidence that you put into me. Construction, what a boring topic, right? I never thought you'd ask a question like that. So let's talk about the pressures that are building in the construction industry today. Yes, there is absolute rampant inflation going on right now. The inflation is, we measure it on a year-to-year basis in my company. It's 25% year over year. Certain commodities like steel have doubled in 18 months. This has put a tremendous pressure on the entire global market. Secondly, people have been building like crazy, and it's really a tale of two cities. Certain industries, automotive, battery electric vehicle, are building like you've never seen before. Other industries, retail, apartments, housing, are falling flat. And why is that? The cost is too high, and we are now facing this rapid increase in our interest rates. So those two factors are putting a lot of strain on the industry today. And so for most of the contractors who are in the industry, the word today is to survive for the next upturn. Because I think we're going to have some very, very hard headwinds. I don't believe we're going to have a soft landing, and it's going to cause, and unfortunately contractors are the last guy in line to get paid, and so you've got to protect your liquidity, protect your talent, and protect your processes. Now, strategically, construction is the second largest industry in the world. Over $15 trillion a year is spent on construction on an annual basis. The only industry that's larger is services, financial services. And it plays a very, very outsized role in the development of almost any country, especially developing countries. Because what comes along with construction? Better infrastructure, better roads, better water, better waste, better housing. And of course, when you take a look at MENA, which is the Middle East, North African area, what you find is that these countries, Israel, the UAE, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, are rapidly transforming their economies away from oil and gas. And in order to do that and to be attracted to the industries that they're most interested in building upon, all of these industries require new facilities, big, new, complicated facilities, whether it's telecom or manufacturing, food, fintech, infotechnology, life and health sciences, medical tourism, you name it, you need new buildings. And if you ever came to the UAE, and especially Abu Dhabi, you'd see two of the greatest hospitals in the world. The Emiratis have spent billions of dollars building a new Cleveland Clinic and a new Mayo Hospital, almost 1,000 beds, and the top equipment that you could possibly imagine. So my whole point of this is that in order for the region to really move forward, we need to have more stability. That stability has to come in interest rates, and it has to come in the inflation rate, because contractors and the industry can't price on unpredictability. So bottom line, I think that construction will continue to play an outsized role in the entire world, but also in the Middle East. And it's one area where you have a lot of cross-border trade, employment going back and forth. And I think the future is very, very bright. We just got to get through this short-term problem that we see.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Appreciate it. And so, Coach, before the buzzer sounds, it's not often that we get a coach off the sidelines and onto the court, and usually the result is a fine is levied after the fact. So we're hopeful today that we'll be able to hear from you based on your recent experience and your past experience in the region, how sports has become a bridge and how it can play a stronger role in integrating the cultures and the peoples and the countries represented in the Abraham Accords. We'd love your thoughts on it, Coach.
Well, if you're sitting there wondering, what is a basketball coach doing up here? So am I. What am I going to do? Teach the Israelis and the Abraham Accords countries to rebound better, maybe shoot the ball better, right? We're talking about energy and geopolitics and construction. So I'm coming at it, I guess, from a little different angle. I am an American Jewish college basketball coach in Auburn, Alabama. How great a country do we live in? And I'm grateful. I am blessed, and I am grateful for that opportunity. And I also, being Jewish, I care greatly about the state of Israel. And I know, having a family of Holocaust survivors, that had Israel been what it is today, back then, how many more hundreds of thousands of Jews would have survived the Holocaust because they had some place to go other than just here and a few other countries that welcome them. So its safety and security and peace with its neighbors are just absolutely vital and important to me. America, I love this country. And when America, I believe, is strong, the world is better off. The world is a better place when America is strong. By the same token, if America is not strong, it's not better for the world. And in particular, being Jewish, when things aren't great in the world, historically, they've not been great for the Jewish people. And so I want to see America great. And I want to see, America continue to be a great ally of Israel's. There was a time many, many years ago when Israel may not have been a great ally. They may have been a bit of a burden. They weren't as strong economically as some of their neighbors. There's not a very large Jewish voting bloc, so on and so forth. But today, Israel is a great ally of the United States of America. And I think the Abraham Accords, in coaching, like, if I could do enough as a coach and a teacher to earn the respect of those that I respect, like the great Pat Summitt, who coached at Tennessee, or the great Pat Dye, who was a legendary football coach at Auburn. And so what I would say to you in the room, those of you that did this, would Golda Meir be proud of you? Would Anwar Sadat be proud of you? Would Yitzhak Rabin be proud of you? And the answer is absolutely yes. So the question is, what do we do with it now, with energy and with geopolitics and with construction? How do we take advantage of it? So for me, in sports, two things. When we take the court on the playground, we don't see color. We don't see black or white. Can you guard? Can you make a shot? It doesn't matter what religion you are. And so couldn't our kids teach us a great deal about playing on the playgrounds and the ability to get along and compete and know who the opponent is? And so oftentimes, we don't know that. And then for me, the things they say you don't ever talk about religion and politics, because you just can't win, right? That's all I talk about is religion and politics. And so for me, I see the Middle East, and particularly I see Jerusalem, as a place that should bring us together and not divide us. I look at Abraham as the father of all nations, and I get the Ishmael and Isaac, and I understand that, but doesn't that make us brothers? It does. Or growing up in New England, dealing with anti-Semitism, this is not what you expected, was it? I know it's not.
I handed you the ball, Coach.
But I'm not staying in the coaching box, am I? But I look at, and I was told for years that my people killed Christ, their God, and that was terrible. And then the more I grew in my own faith, and I realized, wait a second, Jesus was Jewish, right? By the way, you know my wife's two favorite Jews are in the world? Me and Jesus. Doesn't that bring us together? So the reason why I'm talking to you like this is I'm a coach. My job is to bring my team together. When we get on the same page, it's amazing the things that we can do. So I'm here to challenge you to take what you've started, and just, Ambassador Brad, just like you said, oh my goodness gracious, the possibilities and how the Middle East can compete, help the United States compete with the rest of the world, and make China a lot less relevant in a lot of areas because of the technology and the resources and the workforces that exist. So basketball-wise, here's what I want to do. I took my team to Israel this summer. I got 7 kids baptized in the Jordan River. Yep, it was an amazing experience. Yep. They went to Tel Aviv and saw an amazing beach city with high technology and beautiful people of all different shapes, sizes, and colors. And so they're going to hear things about Tel Aviv or about Israel that they may hear from the media or social media, and now they can make up their own minds about what that's all about. And what I would love to see happen, so last year we went to Israel. This is what I'm working on. I'm working on taking college basketball teams next year to UAE, to Dubai, and play some games there. And then get on a plane and go to Tel Aviv and play some games there. And create the Abraham Accords Cup. And have it be something that is just normal, something that's normal. And then by bringing like ESPN alongside us and just see, yes, this is how it is now. And this is how it can be in the future. Jared, you are so right for taking on this challenge and surrounding yourself with amazing people. Peace through prosperity, through people. Israel is doing this because it's in its best interest. United Arab Emirates and Morocco and Bahrain are doing this because it's in their best interests. And it's in the best interests of their people. And that's what this should be all about.
We covered a broad spectrum today because
Rob,
agreements. Sir.
Thank you for not making us follow the coach. That was terrific. And let me just say one other quick thing. There's obviously a big headline that's going on. We're watching the mourning and the ceremonies for the Queen, for Queen Elizabeth II. And so on behalf of Brooke and everybody at the Institute, Jared and all of us up here, our condolences to the people of Great Britain Northern Ireland and the Commonwealth on the loss of Queen Elizabeth II. She was a great leader who served her country for 70 years, wore herself out in the service of her country, and was a good friend of the president's as well. President Trump had a great relationship with Her Majesty. I'll just say one quick thing. Jared and I had the opportunity to be at the NATO summit at the end of 2019. And for some reason, at the end of the evening, we ended up wandering around Buckingham Palace. We didn't have our security details, and there was no one around us. And Jared looked at me and he said, "This is pretty crazy. We've got an American Jew and a Mormon walking around unescorted in Buckingham Palace." And of course, as soon as he said that, 3 people showed up and said, "Gentlemen, well, this way," and found our way out. But we do. We're grateful for everything the Queen represented, and our condolences go out to her family, the royal family, and to the people of the United Kingdom. And I think I said that on behalf of everyone here on the panel and the Institute as well. So thanks, Rob.
Thank you, sir. Well said. We covered a broad scope of terrain today, and we thank our experts on the panel and would ask you to do the same because the accords we're here to commemorate cover an equally large amount of terrain. So please please join me in thanking our panel members today. Thank you very much.
There was nothing like sports diplomacy when we were at Coast.
Everything needs a coach.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Please.
It was awesome.
Yes. It's my great privilege to introduce to you today our next and our final distinguished speaker, Senator Ernst from the great state of Iowa. A native of Red Oak, Iowa, she's dedicated her life to state and country. As a farmer, she learned the value of hard work, service, and sacrifice, where she continued to embody in her public service career in her 23 years of military service. In November 2014, she was elected the first woman to serve in federal elected office from the state of Iowa, and also the first female combat veteran elected to serve in the United States Senate. In addition to her incredible accomplishments, Senator Ernst is a member of the Abraham Accords Caucus, whose responsibilities and representatives from both parties encompass the House and Senate, and dedicated to supporting the Institute's mission of strengthening and expanding the Abraham Accords. We're grateful for Senator Ernst's leadership. Please join me in welcoming Senator Ernst now.
Rob, thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm just so thrilled to be with such a distinguished group of folks today. I'm going to start first. Jared, I just want to say thank you so much for the incredible work that you and your team did in bringing together the Abraham Accords. And I think everyone in this room knows the difference it will make, not just for the United States, for Israel, for our partners across the Middle East, but the entirety of our world. So thank you, Jared, very much for your efforts. And Rob, of course, thanks for that introduction. And again, I am just so humbled to be with everyone today and to be able to address this group of leaders about our Abraham Accords. So today is not just the celebration of the Abraham Accords, but of defenders of our American liberty, promoters of American prosperity, and public servants who have really dedicated their professional lives to preserving the promise of the American dream for our children and grandchildren. And we just heard that from this incredible panel. I was just blown away by the thoughts that were coming from these distinguished leaders. The last 18 and a half months under a feeble commander-in-chief, a scripted and ill-equipped vice president, and a blindly progressive Congress have temporarily clouded American peace and prosperity. And we're experiencing the consequences of a government subservient to a Twitter mafia of liberal media members and Ivy League campus protesters. We're feeling it at the grocery store. We're feeling it at the gas pump. We're seeing it in our communities that are being ravaged by crime and by drugs. An open border pouring millions of illegal immigrants into the country, including known terrorists, continues to threaten our homeland. When we compare the sovereignty, the security, and prosperity in America under President Trump to the last 2 years, it is truly night and day. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people demands that we resist this administration's efforts to bleed our taxpayers dry, cut off our energy industry, unleash an army of IRS agents on our small businesses, and allow criminals to get off scot-free. Like all of you in this room, I'm fighting back. We're fighting back because the future of these great United States demands it. America is the greatest nation on the face of the planet, no question about it. We know that. I know everyone in this room believes that as well. But folks, we have to start acting like it again. Partner nations around the world are asking, where is America? Where is our friend? Where is the U.S. leadership the world needs at such a critical and frankly very scary time? Great power competitors, China and Russia, want to reign over us. Their dictators believe autocracy, armed intimidation, and economic predation can suffocate the blessings of American liberty. But folks, they're wrong, and we'll make sure of that. Others, like violent extremists in Afghanistan, are back in power, and the radical Islamists of Iran and their terrorist proxies across the Middle East are seeking to destroy us. The Iranian Ayatollahs have attempted to hold together a theocratic cult with one unifying principle: death to America. The Biden approach to dealing with these threats is to diplomatically appease and financially enrich. The Iran nuclear deal negotiated under the Obama administration was a catastrophic failure that did not curb Iranian aggression or terminate Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Instead, it effectively financed the world's best organized, most capable terror group to rain down attacks on the United States, Israel, and the Arab Gulf states. After the deal was signed, Iran went on the offensive. Attacks against the United States and our partners increased from roughly 8 incidents every 100 days in 2015 to 28 incidents every 100 days in the 3.5 years the JCPOA was in effect. Iranian terrorist activity increased 223% following the negotiation of the deal. Thankfully, President Trump and many of you in this room pulled us out of the flawed nuclear agreement. We reversed course and put in place a maximum pressure campaign against the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. But Republicans didn't just hold Iran accountable. They worked together to forge greater cooperation and opportunity for our Middle Eastern partners. The men and women who pioneered the creation of the Abraham Accords came into the executive branch, our Department of Defense, and the State Department at a very fraught time. From Jared to Secretary Pompeo and Ambassador O'Brien, to many of you in this room, congratulations. The historic agreement you all broached between Israel and our Arab partners was a feat that, upon President Trump's inauguration, none of us, frankly, would have thought possible. Like me, you all believe that the United States could serve as a great convener and that we could build the capacity of our Middle Eastern partners to make peace with one another. Just as you stated, Ambassador O'Brien, speaking of peace. You all deserve our gratitude. Make no mistake, the Abraham Accords were the most significant peace agreement of the 21st century, and history will always remember the pioneers of this peace deal. And that agreement has allowed America's Arab partners to forge a new path together and end decades of hostile relations with Israel, America's most important partner east of the Mediterranean. Continuing to promote and forge cooperation across the Arab world to unite against the Iranian threat and resist coercive Chinese investment in the region is in our national security interest. I intimately understand the importance of supporting the efforts which you all boldly started. I'm a founding member of the Abraham Accords Caucus. We're committed to keeping the flame of the Accords alive until we retake the White House. As co-chair of the caucus, I'm leading bipartisan, bicameral legislation that brings together America's allies and partners to build a strengthened defense architecture to counter Iran's increasingly complex drone and rocket technology. Our effort demands the Pentagon work with Israel, our Gulf partners, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, and others. I'm pleased to say that the Senate and House versions of the National Defense Authorization Act include the Defend Act, and I'm confident that there is a clear path to get it signed into law. And a brief thank you to the Abraham Accords Peace Institute for endorsing this important legislation. We can and will build a collective defense concept across the Middle East. With the Iranian threat minimized, economic cooperation and cultural exchange, key pillars of the Abraham Accords, can flourish. Like many of you, I believe in America first, always, but never America alone. Our core advantage is maintaining strong allies and partners abroad. Those relationships protect us here at home, and we have a long-standing track record of that commitment holding true. We must continue to push for further normalization and grow security cooperation with willing nations to thwart threats before they hit us here at home. The Accords reconciled the sacrifice of thousands who died fighting the global war on terrorism, including the 600 U.S. service members who have been killed in Iraq and Syria at the hands of Iranian proxies. However, the threat of Iran and its proxies on the American homeland has continued to grow under the ineffective stewardship of the Biden administration. Some of the people in this very room, this room today, have been targeted by the Iranian regime. Friends, now is not the time for America to shrink back. It's time for America to lead, to be that great convener, to remain engaged, and to grow, not abandon our partners and allies. Our national defense capacity diminishes the more our adversaries, from the Taliban and Iran's cluster of violent extremist organizations to Vladimir Putin to the Chinese Communist Party, can call our bluff and see we cannot bear the cost of achieving our goals. Many of the Trump administration's foreign policy leaders, names we all know, are bearing the cost of building the Abraham Accords and directly taking on the Iranian threat today. They, like everyone in this room, deserve our gratitude. So let's go forward together and continue building on this tremendous success. The stakes are very, very high. Protecting our homeland relies upon the continued viability and growth of the Abraham Accords. So thank you all so much and continued success. And on the anniversary of our Abraham Accords, God bless you all, of course, our partner nations, and of course, God bless these great, incredible United States of America. Thank you all so much.
Senator, good to see you. It was beautifully done. Thank you, babe. Thank you.
Senator Ernst, thank you so much for your time. As we wrap up today, we want to again thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Jared Kushner, the real visionary and push behind this, but along with so many of you who are his partners. I want to thank our former president, Donald J. Trump, for putting such an effort into breaking paradigms to put America first, but in a way that created such peace and prosperity around the country. I want to thank the ambassadors who were on stage, Coach Pearl, the ambassadors who are in the audience who had such a big part in this effort. You know, Robert O'Brien, Ambassador O'Brien mentioned something I want to close with, something out of the Gospel of Matthew. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. It may seem a bit strange to close an event dedicated to historic peace between a Jewish state and a leading Islamic powers with a reference to Christian gospel in the New Testament. But it is less so if you delve beneath the surface just a bit and see the profound ties that draw us all together today. They are partly ties of interest and commerce, and you heard a lot of that today, and basketball. But the Middle East is in the final analysis is not important to us, to any of us, because of that alone. We care about what happens there because it is ultimately the source of ourselves. The great faiths, each proclaiming one God, are rooted there. The blessed lives of Abraham, of Moses, of Elijah, of the prophets command our attention and light our paths in mosques in Dubai, as much in synagogues in Haifa, as much as in churches in Fort Worth, Texas. We know at a level commanding our most basic sense of our lives and our spirits as nations, as peoples, and as children of God, that this is the source. And because it is the source, we have an obligation toward it, an obligation of sentiment, of goodwill, and of stewardship. Put simply, the Middle East is not a geographic expression. It is the crucible of mankind. God bless you all. God bless the Abraham Accords, and may we continue this righteous work together. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Minutes with Brooke Rollins, who is a CEO here at the America First Policy Institute. You are watching us. We're live here in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, that just wrapped up about an hour and 20 minutes of really a great remembrance of how important the Abraham Accords were in our not only our nation's history, but on a global scale as well. But we're glad you're joining us. We're hoping to get a few minutes, perhaps with Brooke Rollins, Linda McMahon as well, and Coach Pearls to get him over here to talk about the significance of why he was here. We heard earlier from the basketball coach that it was important to him that his players were able to go back to the Holy Land and not only, discover the truth about that area and the truth that, and he even mentioned, Jesus was Jewish. He didn't understand a lot of the anti-Semite, feelings that many in this country perhaps still have, and he did not understand that. But hoping that sports can bridge the gap there, and you can kind of see some of the speakers earlier, just having a few moments with people that have gathered here in the crowd. But Mark Lauder is going to try to get Coach Pearls over us for a few minutes. I do want to remind everybody we are very happy to have people like Mike Lindell, the great patriot Mike Lindell, on board, and he has been with us from day one, pretty much fighting for this country, fighting for election integrity. So we want you to do your part, and please go to his website, mypillow.com. Mypillow.com. Now's a great time. Kids going back to school. Got to get the dorm rooms outfitted, mattress toppers, sheets, perhaps slippers. Then the classic pillow might be something of interest to your son or daughter going back to school. So go check it out, mypillow.com. Load up the shopping cart, and don't forget to put that promo code in, RSBN, at checkout to get up to 66% off your entire order. And of course, Michael's been out there. He's been fighting. He's been rolling out the coffee as well. So you got My Coffee as well. Go check that out. MyStore.com. Great resources for entrepreneurs. Great website. that really showcases a variety of products that are many made right here in the USA. So go over to mystore.com, mypillow.com as well. That's a great way to give back to Mike Lindell, and also full transparency. You have an opportunity to help out this network as well as we continue to cover just about everything we can that supports this country and our values. And of course, this Saturday we'll be live in Ohio for a President Donald J. Trump rally there. And we just came off the hills. It would have been 2 weeks. Last week we were in the great state of Pennsylvania supporting Dr. Oz and Senator Doug Mastriano and their elections coming up on September the 8th. But we're going to shift our attention now to Ohio, and we'll be there as well to support J.D. Vance and others. A big, long ticket there in Ohio. So tune in for us on that on Saturday, starting at 12 p.m. local time. Speakers start at 4. And then, of course, President Trump takes the stage at 7 p.m. on Saturday. Still trying to, looks like we've got a couple people that are making an attempt to pull Coach Pearls over here, and perhaps Linda as well, if we can get a few moments with them. But I do want to remind everybody also, please go to our website, rsbnetwork.com. That's rsbnetwork.com. That is a great resource to not only get information that's going on within our company and in future broadcasts, articles, newsletters, all the information is out there on our website. You can go to, check it out, rsbnetwork.com. And it's a great way to donate as well. There's a donate tab on there. Just click on that, safe and secure. You can sign up for monthly reoccurring, or you can just do a one-time donation. Either way, the choice is yours. Just go over to rsbnetwork.com. Also, don't forget to download our app. You can do that on your Google, your Android store. Simple and easy.